Good evening, everyone. This is Mike Zarnowski with Special Olympics Maryland. Thanks for joining us for this session this evening. This is the second of two sessions reviewing the changes that we have in store with swimming for the upcoming summer games. As looks like looking at the folks who were on there, several of you were able to join us for the earlier sessions where we gathered input on what we can do to address the really critical challenge that we had at last year's swimming at summer games, most notably the significant overcrowding to the point of it being a major safety concern in the waiting area and all. So that was back in August. The sport we'll be going through some of the things that we'll be moving forward on. The area directors have seen this. Both at the live in-person meeting, area director or area leader meeting we had in November, as well as the webinar for that. And it's also been posted for the last couple times in our last couple editions of the area memo that goes out roughly every 2 weeks. So hopefully some of you have seen this. I think I also included some portions of this, or at least in a summary format, when we sent the invitations out about this session tonight. So thank you with this. This is the work of a large number of folks. And while hopefully you'll all agree that these are positive changes, hopefully you can also, if you disagree, you can see why we maybe are making some of these changes in the interest of safety for our athletes and balancing all the different factors out to have the best program that we can going forward. So that said, welcome. There, we've checked off our first agenda item. We'll just cover the purpose for tonight. We'll review the core issues that kind of set this conversation and process in motion. Go through the process that we use for identifying solutions, both in terms of the overall brainstorming and idea gathering, as well as narrowing it down to the final package of ones that we anticipate or that seem to be have the greatest likelihood of success. I'll go through the package of solutions that the sports management team for swimming, the games management team for swimming, as well as Special Olympics Maryland's sports committee, who had the final decision on this put forward, and next steps. What I would ask is if you could hold questions until the end. There's a good chance that many of your questions are going to be covered here. You'll find also as we go through, while some things are definite, there's still a lot of things we're working out and fine-tuning, and there'll be some resources that we'll be putting together to help coaches share the information with families, athletes, and such, since there are some changes that that are of significance. So I did want to acknowledge the swimming leadership for Special Olympics Maryland. On the left there, you see the swimming sports management team. These are folks who work year-round to put together the best improvements that are possible for swimming as a sport. They work on coaches training, looking at different venues and different opportunities and such for that. On the right-hand side of the screen is the swimming games management team, the games committee, as well as the officials. They handle the swimming competition overall at summer games. Also, they run, or a subset of them run the Loyola swim meet that's held typically in April, I believe. And they also provide advice. So you'll see that there is some overlap between the two groups, and which helps with some of the communication and some of the decision making. The other committee that you may not be as familiar with is the Special Olympics Maryland Sports Committee. This is a committee of the board of directors. It's chaired by Tim Leonard. Tim's a board member. He's also the athletic director for Towson University. On the committee are several folks who have a link to or are very active in the area programs. Terry Waters, who just joined the board maybe 6 months ago, has been for many years actively involved with the leadership of the Prince George's County program, and has gotten a bit involved with the cycling program, I believe, with Montgomery County recently, and has been all around. He's with Coca-Cola and has been very active with Special Olympics. Bob Baker is the area director for Howard County, of course, has a lot of experience with that. Greg Mead, similarly, is the area director for Anne Arundel County. Mike Myers, who I believe is on the call this evening, is a Baltimore City coach and assistant area director there, and helps in a number of different management teams as well, with kayaking and several other sports. Rennie Springyo, who is a coach in Montgomery County and also helps and works on several different sport management teams. Steve Bennett, sorry. Sorry, Steve's here in my office with me tonight, so had to stumble on his name. Steve oversees our community sports program and competitions. Melissa Kelly, who's on staff and oversees our school-based program, and of course myself there. So this committee, again, is the committee of the board of directors, and I had the final approval of the proposals. I will say that the committee really examined what was put forward by the sport management team and games management team, made a couple tweaks to it, but kept most of it intact. And it seems to be there's some really good synergy amongst the different groups on this. So the purpose is just tonight is sharing the decisions that we made regarding the overcrowding in the gym, and then also the capacity concerns as far as the swimming competition, in addition to space concerns in the gym, which is used as sort of a holding area or a waiting area. There was also some challenges, at least in terms of the schedule in the pool. When we had one short disruption this past year, and has happened before, it really sent the schedule on Sunday to going extremely late in the day, as I'm sure some of you probably experienced while there. So we want to look at that. And then in the course of going through this, there was one additional item that came up that I'll touch on in a bit that came to light as a key thing we need to address when we met with the folks at Towson in terms of and vetting these things. It's a concern that we need to ask your help with, and kind of shocking when you hear about it. So that'll keep you on the edge of the seat. So here, just to kind of give you some context, and this is the same slide we shared back in the information gathering sessions back in August. As you notice there, these are the actual numbers of athletes who participate in Special Olympics Maryland. And you see we've got a nice steady growth from 2012 to 2017. 2012 was the first year roundabout where we had numbers that we were very confident were accurate. I mean, there's still a little bit of error in them, but we're pretty confident that that's a really good reflection of how many we had. But you also notice that second little paragraph there indicates it's still less than 7% of the population of individuals who are eligible for Special Olympics. Not that we expect to have everybody join us in the program. Not everybody not all of the people in the world who don't have an intellectual disability are engaged in an organized sports training and competition program. But we certainly would want to have more than 7%, more than 6.7%. So we've undertaken a strategic plan that we're actually starting to see some, we hope to see some nice little bumps this year as we get the numbers in, but looking to get to 20,000 athletes participating by the year 2025. And as a note with that, while that may seem a major stretch being currently at less than 8,000, that 20,000 target would get us matching the current participation rate at several nearby states. Looking at New Jersey, Virginia are all around that. I think that works out to be about 17% participation, and that's all right around with where these other states are, and we certainly can be there. Now, actually, I should back up for a moment. Most of the growth, admittedly, in the strategic plan is going to be through school programs, both in elementary and middle schools, as well as in the Young Athletes program. We've had a tremendous amount of success with several school systems joining are joining with us to offer that within the schools. And the the community-based program has also seen some nice rejuvenation and re-energizing with a number of different programs starting up with that. So while that may not immediately impact our overall numbers of folks at summer games or in swimming, it will eventually. And as we see in a moment, there's some growth trends within swimming itself, which indicate that this is an ongoing challenge. It's a good challenge. Growth always is good in general, but it's still a challenge. So anyhow, so even though the growth is primarily built for our long-term strategy is around schools, that will have an impact as folks graduate from schools or are looking for additional opportunities when the athletes are in school for other components and other sports maybe that aren't offered in the school program. Within the swimming program, in terms of the number of athletes who are training, this is what we have for the last several years. Saw a little bit of a slight decline for a few years and then a nice little jump there. More telling, so and you can see there overall it was a total increase of almost 9%. But more important than that is the number of athletes who have been registering for summer games. As many of you know, or hopefully all of you know, there hasn't been any kind of a cap. Areas can register as many athletes as they want in any of the sports that are offered. It's a risky proposition for us because we could suddenly get a big influx, and that's sort of what's happening with swimming here. But we've been able to maintain that. We are looking here to, so we've had an increase of 26% since 2014, about 5%, a little more than 5% a year. And based on this trend, it's to continue to grow. There's no reason to expect that it wouldn't continue to grow. We would, with no other shifting, we'd expect another 20 athletes on top of the numbers that we had in 2018 at Summer Games and continue on there. It could even accelerate beyond that. So, it is a challenge. We definitely had a safety concern last year at Summer Games, and with the trends that we have, if we don't do something, it's going to continue to be a problem. Again, we could, in theory, have hundreds of more athletes register for Summer Games as we go forward. So the core issue, as noted, is that Summer Games, just the number of people was beyond the capacity of that space to have people in there safely. Anybody who walked in there, it was just chaos, quite frankly, there. And then in addition, the schedule that we have. Then I mentioned that there was an additional concern raised by Towson. Some family members and the staff members at Towson, the frontline staff members there who had this interaction or these interactions, it was more than one. It was, I think, they specified 2, but it sounded like there were even more than that. Staff members would not identify the specific individuals. They just wanted to get it over with, but had a specific interaction around folks complaining about being told that they can't stand at the railing, which is a safety issue as well. Might not think that it is, but someone, yes, can fall over the railing or otherwise be hurt there, and that is a standard Towson rule. It's not something they specially put in for us. And then in addition, there was an altercation, if you will, in the hallway where a family member did not want to, or spectator did not want to follow the direction that a Towson staff member provided and got into a really nasty shouting match and such, to the point where, and I'm shocked to hear this, that the Towson staff member said, quite frankly, they never, and I mean never, want to work a Special Olympics event ever again. That's really a harsh criticism and shocking, and there's no reason why we should have that kind of an interaction. Yeah, we know that the spectator space in the gallery is pretty limited. And we have a few things that'll address it. And there's nothing we're going to be able to do to go back and find the specific family members who did this. We're looking forward and looking towards how do we prevent that from happening and, again, provide a safe environment all around. So that's a third issue that's kind of getting mixed in with that. So the sort of initial premise, just to put it on the table, was that a possible solution that we know absolutely would solve the problem was to implement an allotment or advancement process. What that means, in a nutshell, is not all the athletes who want to go to summer games get to go to summer games in this particular sport. That areas would be given a certain number. The total would be, in order to be safe, our estimate was that it would have to be down as low as 70 to 80% of the folks that we had, the number of folks that we had in 2018, and such. And while we believe the package that we've got here will eliminate the need to implement this now, implement it in 2019, at some point in the future, given the growth, that will be something we will need to implement at some point in the future. It might be 2 years, 3 years down the road. We already do it for bowling, where there's a regional competition and then advancement goes on to the state. And there'll be other sports that we'll need to look at it. Should also point out that this is standard practice. Having some type of an allotment or advancement process is standard for virtually all other Special Olympics programs. I know of only two, that being Delaware and District of Columbia, where they haven't implemented this for swimming. And that's just to a great degree just because of their size. They just don't have the number of athletes where that's become a problem. So it's not, I know a lot of people are concerned what will happen at that point, and it would be a significant cultural change. But anyway, so the point being is that this was one possible solution, and we sought gathering additional ideas on other solutions that could solve it as well and not have us have to go this route. And I'm very pleased that with all the input and the very much of a let's find a way to make this work attitude that everyone took towards addressing the issue really helped identify some solutions along those lines. So the process that we went about was we had, and again, I think many of you were involved with this, had two input sessions back in August with an open invitation. We had a total of 42 folks participate in the swimming sessions. We had done some similar sessions for two other sports at the same time with other issues that they were addressing. We also had some athlete input sessions that were held concurrently with some area town halls that Jim Schmutz, our president and CEO, had hosted. And so Jason Schrimmel, who works with our athlete leadership program, held some input sessions with some athletes to get their input on this. And then some individuals also sent some stuff in by email. The input was then used by the games management team and sports management team with 4 sessions as groups, and then some additional individual meetings with Neil and myself, with Neil Coffey, who is our swimming director, Neil and some of his team members, since he's a member of both of those teams, and others, and as a group came to a package of solutions that I'll share momentarily. Vetted those with both of the, once we had them together, vetted them again with the sports management team and games management team. And then utilizing that, took it to the sports committee. The sports committee, again, had the final say, the final approval. And again, they approved it. They made a couple tweaks to improve it, which definitely improved the package there. And then we shared these with the area leadership in November. Actually, we shared it with them might have been within 48 hours of the sports committee making their final approval with that. And so we had that at there's a webinar prior to the in-person meeting for area leadership and at the leadership meeting, and then again through the area memo a couple of other times. And then we met with Towson to vet out the specific recommendations, and most of the things that we want to do, we definitely can do, which is great. So for those of you who've seen the recommendations, they're all here. I organized them a little bit just from a conceptual standpoint into 4 groupings plus an additional or an other with that. So the first is along the lines of allotments. First, that no, we will not have to implement that 70 to 80% or cut to 70 to 80% for 2019. That was the recommendation, to not do that, and we're able to do that. What we will do is, and this is just being prudent and being safe, is we will implement a quasi-allotment, and what we mean by that is each delegation's numbers will be capped at what their registration numbers were for swimming for the 2018 Summer Games, and then we will reassess in a February or March timeframe as we have some of the other components coming online and getting a little bit clearer as to what they likely will do for us. We'll assess at that point whether we want to or are able to open that up and allow some growth. More than likely, if we are able to do that and allow areas that have some growth to bring additional athletes beyond the number that they registered in 2018, it's going to be on a by request basis. We just can't risk the numbers that would come in. It's not going to be just an open door, everybody bring everybody. But if we are able to do this, it'll be on a request basis. How we're going to operate that, I can't tell you at the moment. We'll work through that. But the key thing again here is that for doing this is we don't want to risk even implementing the changes, and if they don't really have the effect that we hope that they do in terms of controlling the capacity concerns, we don't want the growth in swimming to then create a problem or exacerbate the problem that we already have. So by keeping it at a cap and with controlled growth, if we are able to do that, and that's still an if, we're able to manage that as we go forward. So that's the first of the four kind of packages. The second component is we will be having competition in swimming on Friday. This is a definite. We did get confirmation from Towson that we can do this, and that the scheduling and our availability or access to the facility and such allows for us to get things set up that we need to and to hold the competition when we need to. So the competition, the events, I can't give you an exact schedule at this point, other than it'll be roughly from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, give or take, maybe a little bit earlier than that and go a little bit later, or some variation. But it'll be what we're calling the fundamental events. Those are all the assisted and unassisted swims, the 15 and 25 meter ones, the kickboard race, the flotation events and such. Also the 25 meter free and 25 meter backstroke, the 400 meter freestyle. We wanted to pull at least one longer distance event into Friday, and then the 4x25 freestyle relay. What this will also allow us to do, which is something we really can't do when the fundamental events and to a certain degree the 25 meter freestyle has several of our lower ability athletes. When those are on Saturday or Sunday, it's just not realistic to have coaches come down and assist their athletes on the deck. This opens that up as a possibility. That's not to say it's a free-for-all. It's not to say that everybody will get in there, but the ability to have to allow coaches to come down and help and to be with their athletes is a little bit higher. It may be one coach per program. It may be something else. We'll need to figure that out. But that's one of the pluses for that. So again, the focus here is to both reduce the number of athletes who are physically in the gym on Saturday and Sunday. Also frees up the schedule a little bit to allow for when we get a lightning strike and we have to clear out the pool for a period of time, that can accommodate that. Couple implications. Yes, we're aware of these. First, that the athletes in those events will still be able to go and participate in the other aspects of summer games and opening ceremonies. They can go to the Saturday night social. They can do all those things. They can even stay overnight if their area chooses to have them. And some of them we recognize may be in events that are held on Saturday or Sunday. So they certainly can participate in the other aspects of summer games as well. It also means that athletes who have previously competed in those events in swimming and in cheerleading may need to make a choice as to which sport they will compete. That's not a bad thing. It's a different thing, but it's not a bad thing. Right now, athletes are already having to make choices. As an example, many of you know that I'm a track coach as a volunteer with Baltimore County. I've got several of my athletes in track who also train in swimming and have to make a choice when it comes to summer games, which one they'll do. It's no different here for the athletes who may have to do cheerleading or who are currently doing cheerleading in these events, that they'll have to make a choice. It will not be, just put it on the table right now, it will not be a viable option for an athlete, no matter what the schedule is, to even attempt to do both. They will not be permitted to do that. It's just not realistic to make that work. So again, it's a change, but it's not drastically different from what other athletes are facing who train in multiple sports. So, and we think that this will add again to the opportunities that'll for those athletes on Friday. The next package is reconfiguring the competition schedule. We are working on that. The concept here is to have, if we look at Saturday and Sunday, in addition to Friday, of course, but Saturday and Sunday, we have a morning session each day and an afternoon session each day. Is, in theory, see if we can't get it that we have a group of athletes who would have most of their events or all of their events, if possible, on Saturday morning and Sunday morning, and another group of athletes who would have all of their events on Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon, to some extent kind of spreading them out with that. It's not going to be a perfect split. We're looking at several different dynamics or different dimensions, rather, to go by, either by gender or by age group, or by specific events. When you throw relays in there, that throws the whole thing into a little bit of a mix there. So it's not going to be perfect in terms of splitting, but it should, in theory, help. We're working on making the decision on what will be the final way that we're going to split that. Neil Coffey, myself, and some other folks are really digging through that. We did a statistical analysis on the events, and it didn't help clarify things as much as we would have liked. But we're working on that, and our target is to have that worked out during the month of February. It also means that, and this was brought up by, I think it was one of the folks in on the sports management team, one of the coaches there, that for some areas, the whole concept here again is that if an athlete has their events all in the morning, that they would not need to be in the gym at the facility in the afternoon, and can go elsewhere and watch other competition, take part in other activities, and so on, and vice versa, those who don't have activities in the morning or competition in the morning. Again, free up the space and reduce that overcrowding, which is, again, the primary concern here. But we do recognize, and we'll figure out a way to make this work and meet these needs, that some delegations, particularly those that are further away from Towson, may have difficulty with just the number of folks that they have there to assist with chaperoning or supervising athletes. And one of the coaches just said explicitly, as much as I'd like to do it, I currently don't have the number of people that we bring to summer games to allow us for anybody to take the athletes off-site, or off-site from the swimming venue, that is. So we'll figure something out with that. And maybe it's not the solution that'll work for everybody, but it should help for a number of different people. Then the fourth portion of the package is redesigning space usage, and several different components there. We're looking at a number of different things in terms of how best to use the space that we have. There was some, based on the configuration that we had in 2018, there was some unused space in the what I'll call the back gym, which was where pre-staging and staging was held. There was maybe a quarter to a third of the space there was not used, and we're looking for ways to make that happen, or make that a better use of that. We had considered, just because I think we had mentioned this in some of the conversations, we had considered and did look at, can we move awards back there and make better use of that space that way? The challenge with that, certainly awards would fit back there. But there would be major traffic flow issues in terms of people getting back there and such, that it just does not make it feasible or practical to do that. So, but we did explore that. So we're looking at different opportunities and such there. We're also looking at and have identified some additional space within the facility for waiting and for families. We've gotten confirmation from Towson. There are several classrooms. For those of you who are familiar with Burdick, which hopefully all of you are, When you walk in, what we'll call the front door, what has traditionally been the front door, into Burdick, and you go straight forward, and you have the doors or the multiple doors that then go into the gym. If you instead make a right and go down the hallway there are actually a number of classrooms, there's at least 4 that we have access to, of varying sizes. And actually, I didn't know this. That hallway links back around to the back of the gym, of the largest, the larger gym, the one that's open with two courts together, so that there actually is a nice traffic flow that way. But anyhow, so we will be utilizing some of the gym or some of those rooms there. One we'll use for family hospitality and take family hospitality out of the gym. We'll also be utilizing at least the 3 spaces that we have left over as pre-assigned locations for delegations. Now that we can't accommodate every delegation there, but it's really it's a good situation, I think. Again, speaking as a coach myself, if I was there, I would certainly, my delegation was of a size that fit or that would match for these spaces. Having our own room designated for us, where we have control, it's assigned to us for the duration of the weekend, and it's just a really good situation. Now, we don't know whether folks, or to what degree folks will be interested. The session we had on Monday night, we had 3 areas chime in right away and said they wanted it. If they could, we'll have a process for people to apply for it. But if we do have more areas that will fit in the space, or the spaces who want it, we'll do a drawing of some type to identify who gets them for this year, and maybe we can do a rotation in the future. If we don't have enough areas express interest in this, we may just designate some areas who would fit and tell them and that will be their assigned space. We'll also be, the third bullet there at the top, we'll be designating and marking with like painter's tape or whatever, designated spaces for the remaining delegations in terms of what space they have. It will be pre-assigned in the gym. And in addition, we'll be providing the chairs, similar for those of you who were over at Loyola Blakefield when we were there for 2 years. We'll be similar to there where we had chairs. We'll be providing them. Yes, we will get more than we had there. I know that was a bit of an issue, but we will be providing those chairs, and you'll have designated locations where your delegations can congregate. We also have explored. It's not definite. I don't know that it's realistic for 2019, but the feasibility of having the waiting area, if you will, only permitted for delegation members and not have additional spectators, families, and such in there. There's certainly challenges that come along with that, but it is the concept was implemented at the USA Games very effectively, and it worked really well. So we're looking at that. I doubt that it will be something we'll be able to work effectively for 2019, but it may be something we look at in the future. So again, here the focus is to get some control over the chaos. Whatever number of folks we still have in the gyms as a waiting space, not having them just kind of mark out their own territory and make it just a hodgepodge of stuff. We'll have that pre-designated. And again, remove as many folks from there as we can, utilizing the classrooms that we have. So kind of cover most of that there. And again, there is that possibility we may be able to get the delegation members only, but I'm not sure that that'll happen this year. So those are the 4 main components. And then what I categorized as sort of additional components. First, we're looking at, and this looks very feasible, it's not a definite, but very feasible to have live streaming of the competition, either via Facebook Live or some other technology. Now, no, that doesn't get people out of the gym, but what it does do is make folks more comfortable with leaving the venue and still being able to see what's going on and seeing the competition. It should also help to some degree with the challenges that we've got in the spectator space with a very limited spectator space. So it'll help along those lines and address that additional issue that came up. Well, we knew it was an issue, but just some of the hostility that we had with Towson staff members who are just doing their job and following the designated rules for Towson. I should also point out, just in case folks are wondering or sitting there thinking, well, hey, we were at Towson 3 years prior and there wasn't that kind of a rule. Yeah, that's true, but they also completely rebuilt that facility and in the process of doing so implemented several different additional standards and requirements that we have to agree to as a tenant or a renter of the facility. So yeah, stuff did change. And that's just the nature of life. Another thing that we are working on, and we have designated money in the state budget, the headquarters budget to make this happen, is the addition of some regional competitions. Knowing that eventually, maybe a couple years from now, maybe further down the road, we will need to go to some type of an allotment system for swimming and for other sports, but swimming seems to be the one that's at that capacity point now, other than bowling, where we already have done this. So knowing some athletes will not get the opportunity to advance to summer games to compete in swimming, we want to be sure that there is a truly meaningful, culminating competition for them towards the end of the season. So we're looking at doing two prongs here. One is for 2019 is to work with an area who's already hosting a competition and working with them to kind of bump it up, add some additional fanfare and festivity. If there aren't awards presented, make that a part of it, so on down the line. We're not going to be able to add a dance. We're not going to be able to add an overnight or any of that, which certainly are enjoyable components of summer games. But what we can do is again bump up that festivity and that fanfare, and work to make that. And the sports management, the games management team, but also the sports management team, agreed that they would be, to the extent that they can, very willing to help make that happen. The other thing that we'll be looking at to do, hopefully in 2019, it may be something where we get the groundwork settled with this, is to develop an additional new competition in this kind of regional model, again, with lots of fanfare and awards at a facility or a location that hasn't been used before, working with one of the community colleges and such. And again, taking the lead, we certainly would be working with the area in that territory to make that happen. Where that will be, I cannot tell you at this point in time. That's something that Zach Cintron and the sports committee and games management committee for swimming will be working on putting forward. And then, so we're excited. And then the intent with that also is, going forward, is to add one or two additional regional competitions each year, so that when the time comes where we definitely have to move to an allotment process, that those meaningful competitions, those regional competitions, are in place and are already functional from that standpoint. So, so hopefully that'll lay that groundwork for that. And then the last item is we will be having paid Towson security, not the regular Towson recreation staff who manage Burdick, but we will be having security personnel there in the spectator area and elsewhere, uniformed, to help manage the process there. In addition, we need to work out how to best communicate this with family members and other spectators. The type of behavior that was described to us by the Towson folks will not be tolerated and will lead to the removal of individuals there. We know if it's at most 1% of our family members and spectators, that might be a lot. Almost everybody is very cordial, and even when times are challenging, is very supportive of things. But there are some, and it's just the type of behavior we can't tolerate. So again, just kind of putting it out there that we will be taking a very strong approach with that going forward. We have the codes of conduct as well. We certainly don't want to suspend a family member from ever coming to a competition of any type for a year or two, but that's ultimately an option should it come to that. But we just cannot tolerate that kind of behavior that was described to us. So those are the overall packages. Again, those four main ones, and then these sort of additional components there. And again, I think anything that you see that was in the approved batch is there, just kind of reorganized to make it a little clearer. So what are the next steps? So we're completing. This is the second briefing session with coaches. We have that tonight, and that'll be complete. If there is a need to have additional ones later on, we certainly will look at doing that if we need to. We're looking to have that final determination of the competition schedules by the end of February. We're not going to wait to hold up until the end of February if we have it worked out before then. So looking forward to moving forward to that. We'll make the final determination on whether we can need to stick to that allotment cap I talked about, or if we can have allow areas to bring additional personnel, again, on a by request and by approval basis for that. So we'll know that by the end of March. We'll be working on that communication of these adjustments to families and the behavioral expectations, for lack of a better term, and hopefully they can self-monitor a bit with that. But that'll be in April and thereafter. And we need to figure out some of the methods on that. Again, working with the designated areas on these inaugural regional competitions through the month of February up through May with that. And then we'll be assessing the effectiveness of how the solutions worked, both in terms of did they solve the problems of both the capacity concerns and the safety concerns that we have, as well as the schedule concerns. And then, in addition, the issue that Towson brought up with us. We'll be assessing that in June. But so there's that component. But then also coupled with that is, did we do it, and we were able to find a way to do it where the folks who attended the swimming competition at Summer Games were pleased. We can certainly implement them and solve those problems, but if we do it at the risk or at the expense of just making everybody unhappy, then we failed. So we'll assess that in June. We certainly will be getting input from folks in the delegations, from family members, and so on down the line. So that's what I wanted to cover. Just a quick thank you, but we can back up on stuff. The question I have, I want to see if anybody has any questions. What I'd like to do, if you could please, if you could type the questions into the question box. I know a lot of times we're able to have folks raise hands for tonight for a variety of reasons, number of folks involved and such, as well as some other things. We'd like to keep it with you guys typing in and sending us. So if you have a question, whether clarification of anything or any question associated with it, go ahead and type that in. Hopefully we've covered most of the items that folks have. And I've got Steve here eagerly looking at the screen, ready to read any off to me. And again, I will tell you right now, I can almost guarantee you that if you ask 5 questions, there might be 3 that I don't have an answer for yet. We're still trying to figure some of this out. And I might do better than that as a batting average. But go ahead and shoot away if anybody has any questions. While folks are typing in, what I will tell you, the slides for this, and probably tonight's recording, since we tweaked it just a little bit from the recording we had for Monday night, will be sent out, or a link to that recording. It'll also be posted on the fairly new, it's only about 2 to 3 weeks old, SOMD Coach Resource page, which is on the SOMD.org site. It's not behind any kind of a firewall. It's public. Anybody can get to it. So we'll have those there, as well as, so that'll be in the next couple days. We're also putting together a communication piece, a one-pager, maybe front and back, that explains all of this so that coaches can utilize that tool in explaining any of the changes with family members, with athletes, with other volunteers and such, so that you have that information there. So that's it again. I don't see any questions at this point. Oh, one just popped in from Mr. Myers. So Steve, what do we got? So I can pause and take a drink.
The one from Mr. Myers, would the intention or would the addition of Friday's events make it possible for the athletes only competing on Friday to participate in another sport for the weekend?
That's a good question. I would say initially, I don't know. It's a good question. Okay, so that's one of the 3 out of 5 that I can't give you a straight answer for. Okay, I guess in theory that's possible, but I guess one of the things I would want to be sure that does not happen is athletes enter, say, an athlete who is a track athlete or a softball athlete, purposely enter events that are below their ability level just so that they can do a swimming event as well as another sport. But it's certainly, I mean, you do make a valid point, and it's worth considering, and something we will definitely look at. So, good question. What else we got, Steve?
Let's see. We got one from Carol Camacho. Another one just popped up, so sorry, I got to scroll up a little bit here. Not sure if I get the whole question, but why aren't Unified Partner numbers included in your safety protocol 4?
Okay, good question, Carol. They sort of are. It's just they're not explicit. We're basing it off of the number of athletes, and in theory, if the number of athletes go up, the number of partners go up, or if the number of athletes go down, the number of partners go down. So rather than adding it in explicitly, we didn't. I think the concept, the process still works the same, and we would wind up in the same situation. I don't know. Yes, I do realize that some areas have a more robust unified sports program for swimming than others might, but it certainly is a key component of Special Olympics for all of our sports, or virtually all of our sports, and it's not something that we want to sacrifice. That is a major component of what we've got. So I'm not sure if that answers your question adequately, but that's the rationale. That again, the partners, if we solve the problem with the athletes, the partners will be solved at the same time. Any issue with partner capacity will be solved at the same time. Okay.
We have another one. Can we get swim scheduled ahead of time during the training process and the training components leading up to the games so that we can better plan what events athletes train in?
Okay. Absolutely. So, and I'm sorry, I skipped over it a little bit, I guess. But when we say the second, it's not a bullet, I guess, but the second item of what's on the screen now, when we have that competition schedule worked out by the end of February, we absolutely will send it out to you and provide it, and it'll be posted on the public website, if you will, and have that out there. We're not going to hold it back. So the commitment, though, is that this is a little bit more involved in making the decisions of what that schedule will be than the tweaking that Neil has done sort of independently, I guess, each year. So as soon as we got it, you'll get it. Well, I mean, within a day or two, and it'll be available there so that you can plan out that way. I do realize that many folks look at the schedule and the order, the sequence of the events in determining which events an athlete will both compete in at summer games, but also compete in throughout the season. So yes, we absolutely will get that to you as soon as we possibly can. But again, our guarantee or our promise is we'll have the decisions made around it by the end of February.
We have another one. Question basically centralizing around the fact that some of the, if not most of the athletes in the fundamental events that we're looking at holding on Friday are school-aged, and school will not be completed by summer games. And again, the challenge between the school system in competing and maybe looking at different events to be held on Friday.
Yeah, so we certainly expected that, and that the most, if you will, controversial component of this package is the events and moving them on Friday. The we recognize that yes, many of them, not all, but many of those athletes are there. We already have a fairly robust cheerleading program, which has a large number of school-aged athletes there, and are participating in that and attend without a component. We have, I won't say a large number, but a fairly large or reasonable number of school-age athletes who participate in winter games, which are on a Monday and Tuesday. It's not a Friday, but a Monday and Tuesday. And again, not that we do things or made decisions to do things because everybody else is doing it, but it's a system and a process or a structure that most other states, and I excluded New Jersey or Delaware and DC for this when I said in terms of those who have to do an allotment process, but virtually everybody has their summer games stretching into a Friday or into a weekday. Yes, it would be a bit of a culture change for those folks who are participating in swimming, but it's already done. And while certainly it may be particularly challenging, we know for some individual athletes, it is done. It's not a really far out or whatever idea with that. And then in addition, you're asking specifically about these events. Part of the purpose of moving some events on Friday, in addition to spreading out the schedule, but is to find some athletes or a group of athletes who would, if they go to the event, that would have their events then on Friday, and have fewer of them come back in on Saturday and Sunday. The third or the additional component with that is the plus or the benefit of our ability to have or to allow coaches down on the deck for those fundamental events, which is really not feasible, and we know that it's a challenge for folks. It's just not realistic to do that on a Saturday or Sunday for a variety of reasons I'm not going to go into now. But the ability to do that and have that as a component or as a component of those competitions, I think enhances the ability for those athletes to participate. In some ways, quite honestly, and I'll use with some school systems, having an event on a Friday actually makes it easier for them to get there, in that they can build it around their school structure. And I know that doesn't apply to everybody. So we know it was not an easy decision to make, and we know that some folks are not going to be happy with that particular decision, but it was made eyes wide open, and we hope folks can make that adjustment to it. So not sure if that answers it for you, but that's the best we can do, I guess. So we've only got a couple minutes left. Steve, was there any other? We see one area is already saying that they also would be interested in a classroom. I got to tell you, if you're of a size that would fit in there, I mean, it's to the point where now I'm not gonna tell you that we'll guarantee your stuff will be safe, but you could leave your stuff in the room. It would be your room for the weekend. The other thing is each of those classrooms. Let's assume for the moment that we will get the live streaming, which we're pretty confident will happen. Each of those classrooms has its own video monitor there. So you could have your own spectator space. Unfortunately, some areas are just too big. I'll use as an example only because I know Alan takes great pride, Alan Washak takes great pride in the number of athletes that participate in Howard County. They would be too big. There's no way that they would fit into safely into any of the rooms. But yeah, it's a sweet deal if it works for you. So anything else, Steve?
I don't see anything at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, and Carol says Anne Arundel would be. Carol, actually, I think Anita also chimed in on that on Monday night session. So you guys are simpatico on that. Okay. So we do have another webinar tonight right afterwards. I think a couple of you are set to be on it for the Winter Games, the Head of Delegation webinar. So we do need to close down and such. So again, there'll be ample opportunity for additional questions and such. I'm sure that after this year's summer games, we'll have some adjustments and tweaks, and of course, we'll have some tweaks going up to it. But I do appreciate your participation tonight, your questions, and look for the communication with the slides, the one piece, or what's front and back. It'll be a handout that you can utilize, and a link to the webinar recording. And of course, again, this will all be on the public page. Any family member is welcome to listen to this if they want. Any athlete, though, I don't think we said anything that would be inappropriate for that. At least we're trying not to. So that's one of the nice things with this new site. So again, thank you much. I look forward to seeing you, all of you, at an upcoming event or a training period. And for those of you who will be with us again, you will be knocked off of this webinar, and you'll need to sign back in for the head of delegation webinar. So thanks much. And again, look forward to seeing you soon. Appreciate all of your input and support.